Hey everyone, so this time we're going to be looking at Saiyuki, The Journey West. Now this is one of the 4 great classic novels of Chinese literature, the other 3 being Water Margin, Dream of the Red Chamber, and my personal favorite, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Not just because I'm a Koei fanboy or anything, but it is probably my favorite story. We might be getting into that series sometime later. It's probably my favorite out of all of those stories. So The Journey West was a hugely influential story, and it inspired a lot of different things. You can see it in Goku from Dragon Ball. He is very much inspired by Son Goku from this story. So the original story was based on a historical account of a Buddhist monk who traveled from China to India, and he was gone for about 17 years. Saiyuki is much more along the lines of the fantasy setting, as it draws heavily on Chinese folklore. And I have a few issues with the way this world is built, but I'll get into those in just a second. So in the story, you play as the Buddhist monk from the historical account and also from the more folklore and fantasy account. You can choose between either being a man or a woman. It doesn't really seem to have much of an impact on the story. The first character that you meet is Son Goku. He is a were, which means he can basically transform into a giant ape gorilla thing, much like the Saiyans would do if they ever see moonlight. But he isn't the only one that you meet. Apparently, this entire world that they've constructed is just chock full of wares. I don't understand how these wares haven't, taken over the entire world yet, but it seems kind of inconsistent on how you become one. It's kind of weird. The wares are really the only major problem I have with the story, because it just seems so random on how they are created, and I'm still struggling to figure out how they haven't taken over all of China yet. It's just very strange to me.
My name is Chin.
I really kept asking myself during this, how come everyone isn't aware? And why are people prejudiced against them if they're just everywhere and at any second they can just get turned into one? It seems really strange, but it somehow works in this world, but I keep going back to how it really shouldn't be able to work in the world. It's just kind of one of those weird things in this story. I really can't explain it very well. So in the story, your character is charged by Lady Canon to bring a magic staff from your temple in China to the Golden Temple in India. Now you wouldn't think that would be so damn hard, but one, it's a very long walk for him. 2, everybody seems to want this staff, and Lady Canon doesn't really want to explain anything to you. You find out a little bit later, after you've met her, that you're supposed to basically free all of the Guardians along the way. And, which seems okay, but, hey, could've let our poor little monk guy know that at the very beginning. Maybe it might have saved him some time, or at least some mental anguish. Each of the Guardians actually helps you along the way. You can kind of summon them and they give stat boosts, or they heal your party over time. It's a really cool mechanic, and I just really love how they integrated that with the actual story of gathering all the Guardians. It works really well. So you get your staff, you start meeting all the different wares like Son Goku and a bunch of the other guys, and you just keep meeting more of them along the way so that you have a pretty diverse party that, can kind of adjust for any weaknesses that the other characters might have. And you would think you would be all set up, everything would be perfectly fine, you'd have no problems. But it feels like, aside from the people who want to steal the staff from you for whatever reason, you also have 5 or 6 different subplots going on. You've got Goku's brother, who apparently can turn into a bull. Sure, fine, that works for me. I mean, everybody else can transform in the game, so why not have Goku's brother turn into a bull? But you also have just like weird people that come up out of nowhere, and they are just little side missions. Some of them you can't avoid, some of them you can, but you get rewarded from doing them because you'll get more characters in your party, and it just seems to all sort of work out well in the end. The plot that I both love and hate at the same time has to be Goku's brother, because it's all just one big misunderstanding. It doesn't really need to take place, but it's fun that it's there. Once you go through and you beat up a bunch of like Goku's brother's minions and whatnot, you then have to, go and fight Goku's brother. And it's just one misunderstanding after another where you do the right thing, you save the people, and Goku's brother thinks it's something totally different. As confusing and just kind of convoluted as the story is, it does keep you moving along pretty well. There are a few spots in it where I kind of feel like they don't really need this, or they could have done it a little bit better, but it might have like taken away from something else in the story if they got rid of it. I probably shouldn't be like trying to edit this thing down because it is a classic, but just because it's a classic doesn't mean everybody's gonna like the story. The game does offer a few opportunities to grind for you, just because, you're gonna need money at some point, and you don't necessarily get as much as you probably should get, or that you need to get, in order to like upgrade your weapons, or purchase spells, or that sort of thing. That seemed to be the only spot where I was like, I don't really know, this is kind of weird, but at least they did add in that grinding aspect so that you can figure out a way to, afford everything that you need to afford. I do want to mention that all of the characters in this are really just a lot of fun. They're kind of stereotypical now because you do have like the tough girl who's running away from her marriage. You've got the guy that, the best I can compare him to is like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. He looks a little bit different, so people kind of persecute him. It seems to be something where I could see other stories like being brought from this. And it sort of brings me back to like that idea that there are only 7 stories in the world and we just keep telling different remixes of them. I don't know exactly how true that is, but I can kind of feel, I kind of feel like they're doing that a little bit here. Granted, this was written much, way before a lot of the other folklore, and it was written in a time where you couldn't really see the different types of folklore that was going on. So this was kind of like an isolated Chinese story, but you can see parallels when you look at some different, Western stories as well. I really hope all that rambling nonsense made some sense to somebody. If it didn't, just, go down in the comments and say, hey, can you, explain that in English or anything else, any way better than what you actually described it. So I really like just how creative this game is. It's just a lot of fun to play. It draws on a lot of fun things. The fantasy setting is just really amazing. I just cannot express how much I enjoyed playing this game, even though it was incredibly frustrating at times. So now that I've gone on about the story for a really long time, let's actually talk about the game. It's a tactical RPG that's sort of in the vein of Tactics Ogre or Final Fantasy Tactics. This is a genre that I really, really love, and I love both Tactics Ogre and Final Fantasy Tactics. This does a really good job with the actual genre, and it works fairly well. I don't like it as much as the other games, but this one is a very good version of that same tactical RPG. The enemies in this don't feel like they're incredibly stupid. I know in some of the games you could just sort of move your lead character over into a corner and the enemies will just kind of flail around trying to get at them. You can't really do that here, especially since they keep your party relatively small. You only have 6 characters in order to meet the challenge that you have. While that seems a little bit small in case of some of the other RPGs I've mentioned, this one actually works pretty well, and you have this really nice balancing act with the different elements and everything, so it all seems to work pretty well with what you're doing. They do throw a few different quests at you that you can do, so it's not just defeat all the enemies. You have defeat the enemy boss, you've got protect a certain character, you'll have survive for X number of turns, kind of the standard things that you would find in a tactical RPG. They all work really well here. I like the way that they do it so it doesn't just feel like, things are just spiraling out of control and you're just kind of doing the same thing over and over again. The game's not really that hard either. It might take you 1 or 2 times to beat a level, but it shouldn't stop you up too much. So the wear transformations really make this game a little bit more unique. I seem to remember when I first played it, I had absolutely no idea with what I was doing, and I just was having multiple wares just transform in one battle, which totally defeated the purpose of doing it, as the point meter you have for your wares just was immediately drained for me. And I was honestly too stupid to figure out why. So yeah, it took me a while to figure out the wear system. It wasn't too complicated now that I was actually paying attention to the instructions. Back when I first played the game, I think I was like a sophomore in high school, I didn't pay any attention to the actual instructions on the screen, so I was just screwing up left and right and had multiple wares in one battle, and just nothing was working out for me, and I got really frustrated with it. But now as I go back and I play it again and kind of look at it with a fresh set of eyes, it's a lot easier to figure out now. When you transform a character into a wear, it uses up 2 wear points. When you use any one of its attacks, that takes a certain number of wear points as well. So having 2 or more early on is not going to help you out with what you want to do. It's just going to be totally counterproductive. The wear system works really well, and it ties into like the balancing act you have to do with like different magic and skills. So each wear and each character have their own, affiliation, whether it's like gold magic, fire magic, earth magic, water magic. And you need to kind of figure out what you want to do with your team in order to fight back against your enemies, who are also using that same balancing act. And getting the right wear to cause the most damage to your enemy is absolutely important if you want to be successful. This game was a lot of fun to play. I really enjoyed the entire tactical RPG genre. While this one isn't the best, I still like Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre a lot more. This is a lot of fun to play, and just the art style and the combat and everything, it made me feel like I was playing something that could have been on the SNES or on the Sega Genesis, but it was still advanced enough to be on the PlayStation. So if you get a chance, definitely check this game out. It is a lot of fun, and I really recommend it. So anyway, guys, that's going to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and have a great day, everyone.